democracy. And this revolution is about stopping.
Good evening, UNC family. Good evening, my UNC family. Special good evening to the Honourable political leader, the best Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honourable Kamala Persad-Bissessar of Senior Council, who has led one of the most caring administration between 2010 to 2015, when the people of Trinidad and Tobago were able to live prosperous and safe lives. I say good evening to my very loving constituents in Barataria, San Juan, who are joining us virtually this evening, and those of you all who are gathered here with us at the headquarters. Trinidad and Tobago, my brothers and sisters, is facing one of its darkest times. And that is orchestrated by none other than this Rowley-led PNM government. Over the past few days, we would have seen the revelation that took place with respect to Faris Al-Rawi and Vincent Nelson, with the collapsed prosecution of Mr. Ramlugan and Mr. Ramdeen. That case could have gone no way, because you had a junior note-taker attorney general who spent about 7 years in law school to try to prosecute one of the brightest attorney generals, Anand Ramlugan, in Trinidad and Tobago. Because you see, Faris Al-Rawi does not understand or does not appreciate the law. He does not understand or he does not appreciate what his role is in the Constitution. That is why he was fired by Keith Rowley. But tonight we are asking Keith Rowley to kick him out of the cabinet completely. Kick him out. Because when Faris Al-Rawi acted as the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, he had to be guided by something called the Constitution. That is our supreme law. And Section 76 of the Constitution says that the Attorney General in Trinidad and Tobago is responsible for the administration of legal affairs, namely civil proceedings. Civil proceedings. We must make it clear what are civil proceedings. You have civil proceedings and then you have criminal proceedings. The Director of Public Prosecution is another office created by Section 90 of the Constitution. And Section 90 of the Constitution gives the DPP the sole power, the only person vested with the power in Trinidad and Tobago to institute and undertake criminal proceedings, to take over and continue criminal proceedings, and also to discontinue criminal proceedings. Nowhere in that section you saw the name of the Attorney General being mentioned with respect to criminal proceedings. So therefore, any Attorney General, be it a PNM Attorney General, a UNC Attorney General, they have no part to play whatsoever in criminal proceedings. Do we understand that? But here we have Mr. Faris Al-Rawi making secret deals with witnesses in criminal matters, in breach of the Constitution, in breach of the supreme law of Trinidad and Tobago. He now took over the role of the TTPS, who is involved with investigating, charging, and prosecuting individuals. And Faris Al-Rawi, being an attorney at law, maybe he's an attorney generally, but Faris Al-Rawi, being an attorney at law, is an officer of the court. You are not a police officer. You must know your role. You must stay in your lane, Faris Al-Rawi. You cannot get involved in criminal proceedings. And you are hearing this thing called an indemnity. Well, what is this indemnity that we are hearing about? The indemnity is this document I have here in my hand. This is the document that Faris Al-Rawi would have made an agreement between himself and Mr. Vincent Nelson. This is it here. And this is what Faris Al-Rawi had agreed to with respect to this indemnification. Because before the Mr. Ramlugan and Mr. Ramdeen and Mr. Nelson was charged, this agreement was made sometime in November 2017. And in this, Faris Al-Rawi is telling Mr. Nelson that, listen, if you give me evidence, I am not going to disclose that evidence to any prosecuting authority or tax enforcement authority outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Nelson is a citizen of the UK. So Faris Al-Rawi is saying he is not going to give that information to the UK. The second thing that happens is Faris Al-Rawi is telling Mr. Nelson that he will undertake to recommend to the DPP not to charge Mr. Nelson. Earlier on, I told you about the constitutional roles that they have to play. Faris Al-Rawi has no business in criminal proceedings. How can you then go telling Mr. Nelson that you are going to recommend to the DPP not to prosecute him? That is absolutely absurd. It is absolutely absurd. And then he tells Mr. Nelson, well, look, if you get yourself in any problems, we are going to indemnify you. We're going to pay all your legal bills, all your consequential losses, all your loss of earnings. And that is what currently is the case before the court. Because all of these things that Faris agreed to with Mr. Nelson now finds itself in the courts, and the DPP came on the Monday and told the court that there's a civil matter before the court regarding this indemnity, so therefore he had to discontinue the matter against Mr. Ramlogan and Mr. Ramdeen. So we cannot understand why Faris Al-Rawi was playing such an integral role in this entire fiasco. Because he is not the one to make any deals or any bargains with any witness. That is solely within the discretion of the TTPS and the DPP. And then Faris Al-Rawi is saying, well, listen, everything I did was up to mark, it was good. He's saying that at every stage of the proceedings, he was advised by two prominent senior counsels. So he is no longer taking any blame for this. He is now blaming the lawyers who have advised him that this document here was proper. Well, tonight I want to tell Faris Al-Rawi, reveal that legal advice and that legal opinion you got from those two senior counsel. Reveal it. Because that money that you paid those senior counsel from didn't come out your pocket, it came out from our pocket, the taxpayers. And we have a right in this country to read and to see that legal advice that made you sign the secret deal with Mr. Vincent Nelson. Tell us, let us see it. Lay that legal opinion in the parliament. Because then we hear the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is saying that don't ask him nothing about Nelson. He always have an opinion about somebody and something, but he's telling you now, don't ask him anything about Vincent Nelson. And why don't ask him anything about Vincent Nelson? It is because he admits that the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago should play absolutely no role whatsoever in the prosecution of any individual. Well, tonight I want to ask Keith Rowley, why is Faris Al-Rawi still squatting in your cabinet after he played such an integral role in the criminal prosecution against Mr. Ramlogan and Mr. Ramdeen? You see, the Prime Minister cannot now take a vow of silence on this matter. You cannot, because Faris Al-Rawi indicated that he spoke to you, Mr. Keith Rowley. He spoke to Stuart Young, Fitzgerald Hines, Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal about this matter. It is about time that all of you all go before the media and answer and tell this country what was the nature of that conversation between you and Faris Al-Rawi. Do not now come and tell the country that you are taking a vow of silence after all they get catch. After all they get catch, you now want to stay quiet and say that we have no role to play in the prosecution. When Mr. Ramlogan and Mr. Ramdeen were charged, all of them were jumping up, celebrating. They had the most amount of things to say. But today, when the case has collapsed, they say nothing. We must get rid of this PNM government, starting with the top, starting with Al-Rawi and going down to Stuart Young. All of them must go. Because this case, the collapsed prosecution of this case has cost the taxpayers millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it will continue to cost us millions of dollars. Because if those two fellas decide to sue the state for malicious prosecution and false imprisonment, well, I don't know where they get the money to pay them. But I know who should pay them. That money should come out of the pockets of Keith Rowley, Faris Al-Rawi, and Stuart Young. Don't put that burden on the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. Do not put that burden on them. Because you see, this matter here is very important, and I cannot understand why Keith Rowley is protecting Faris Al-Rawi. He likes to bully everybody. Everybody know that. He like to buff up everybody, buff up the media, tell this one this and tell this one that. But tonight I want to tell you, Keith Rowley, you are a coward. It seems as though you are afraid of Faris Al-Rawi. If you were not afraid of Faris Al-Rawi, you would have fired Faris Al-Rawi from the time you became aware of this indemnity. From the time that case collapsed, Faris Al-Rawi should have never seen the cabinet doors again in this country. But you continue to protect him because it seems as though, I am not alleging anything, it seems as though Faris probably knows something that we don't know. That's the only reason why you probably still have the man in your cabinet. But tonight I want to tell Keith Rowley, you are a coward. If your name man, call the election now. Call it. Call the election now. Because you see, this thing is a whole web of deception, you know. You know who was representing Vincent Nelson when he got charged? Is the member for Port of Spain, South Keith, Scotland, you know. You all know that? And you know who had to pay Keith, Scotland? The taxpayers, because that was part of the indemnity. You remember Faris tell Vincent Nelson, anything going on with you, brother, with respect to this case, we cover in you know. It's like insurance. It's fully comprehensive, right? And Vincent Nelson would have hired Mr. Scotland in order to represent him in the magistrate's court. So tonight I want to tell you, Mr. Scotland, if you know anything whatsoever, I'm not saying that you know anything, you know, pick up your bicycle and ride as fast as you can to the nearest police station and tell them every single thing. Because you see, the cabinet right now is imploding. This cabinet is imploding because we are hearing Faris Al-Rawi making a deal with Nelson to keep hush-hush and don't give no information to the UK authorities. And then we're hearing our next cabinet minister giving the information to the UK authorities. You would have read it yesterday in the papers. And then we see Mr. Stuart Young went on social media and he said, well, there's nothing wrong with providing evidence to any law enforcement authority outside of Trinidad and Tobago. I make no statements on that, except to say that the cabinet now are whistleblowers. They are blowing whistles on each other. One of them, they're blowing a whistle on the DPP. The next one blowing whistle on Nelson. The next one blowing whistle in the UK. And Nelson right now blowing whistle in court. You know, it reminds me of a song that Black sing. You know that song called Whistle and Horn? Well, if the cabinet minister is not whistling, it's horn. So, you know, and that is how this cabinet is operated. Because they are not working together, they are actually working against each other. And if you work against each other, how are you working for the people of Trinidad and Tobago? You cannot work for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But tonight, I want to ask this government to come clean and tell this country how much money you have paid lawyers so far with this collapsed prosecution of Mr. Ramlugan and Mr. Ramdeen. That money could have gone to fixing road and fixing pothole and buying more cameras for the police officers to keep us safe, but rather you go on these expensive political witch hunts and there's no benefit to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Tell us, and we want to know who are the lawyers who are representing the state with respect to this matter that Mr. Nelson filed against the Attorney General. We want you to tell us who are these lawyers, because that claim can cost us $120 million if Mr. Nelson is successful. So disclose who are the lawyers in that matter. Disclose it. Stuart Young yesterday in his Facebook post talking about the defense that the state would have filed in the matter. Well, let us see the defense. Don't tell us about it on Facebook. Let us see the defense. Let us see your defense to Mr. Nelson's claims with respect to that matter right now in the court that caused the collapse of the prosecution. Let us see it. You see, this government has lost every ground of moral authority. They are no longer able, they have no credibility in order to lead the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I cannot understand how they continue to sit down and collect a salary that taxpayers are paying in this country, when right now they should be giving statements to the police with respect to their involvement in this entire scandalous fiasco. This has left a permanent stain in our democracy. It deals with offenses such as perverting the course of justice, the obstruction of justice, misbehavior in public office. And these are just to name a few. There are so many other offenses that they must be investigated for, because we cannot allow this matter. We cannot allow this matter to rest silently in this country. We must stand up for our democracy in this country. We must stand strong. We must stand united. We cannot let the PNM get away with this one. They must be held accountable for this. They must be held accountable. And tonight I just want to close by saying, look, Faris, HYMC. Look how you mash up the case. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the revolution.
People crying out for justice. Some of them crying out for freedom.